Now the trade deadline has come and gone, so obviously there will be no more trades this season. But the offseason is going to be here in no time, and the Raptors might just want to monitor the situation of one disgruntled star in the league in particular. What's up, everybody? It's JJ Buckets, and you know what you're here for. You know you're here to talk some basketball, and I'm here to talk some basketball with you. Now, before I fully hop into the video, obviously just make sure you're leaving a like on it. Helps the video perform a lot better, so I super appreciate when you folks are doing that. And if you're new here and you like the content that you watched today, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. I am very, very, very close in my mind to 1K at this point. I mean, obviously it's still like just under like 200 away, but you know, it just feels so within reach. So if you're doing that, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Now, without further ado, let's hop into the video. Now, the star player that I want to talk about today is Donovan Mitchell. That's right, the Utah Jazz player. There's been a lot of murmurings kind of on the rumor mill that he might want to, look elsewhere away from Utah if, if the team doesn't really perform up to standards. Like, I believe there was one quote out there that was something along the lines of he's one first round exit away from being in New York. In this case, obviously, we're hoping that it's not New York, we're hoping it's Toronto. But the idea here overall was that Mitchell was looking for a bigger market is another thing that was said like in these rumors. And I mean, Toronto is definitely a bigger market than Utah. I mean, like a lot of places are a bigger market than Utah, but nonetheless, the idea here is obviously envisioning Mitchell, in a trade to Toronto. Now, before I get my heads chopped off, this is not me saying my heads. Did I really say heads? Do I have multiple? Not going there. Okay. Now, before I get my head chopped off, this is not me saying, anything reflective on the current core. I am a fan of the current core. I am a big fan of the guys that we have now, but you can always do better. And if you feel like this is a trade that pushes you over the top, you got to make those all-in moves, right? Like, you had a good core here together when DeMar DeRozan was here, obviously with Kyle Lowry, and I mean, obviously, all of us still have love for DeMar here in Toronto, but you had to make that trade at the time to go get somebody like Kawhi that pushed you over the top. And you went and did that, and you went and got an NBA championship. Now, obviously, Donovan Mitchell isn't a Kawhi level player, so there's that. But at the same time, Donovan Mitchell is still a very exciting young star, right? I mean, he's only 25 years old. He's already shown just a lot in this league. While I find that he's a star in the regular season, I really do see Donovan as somebody that raises his play in the postseason. Like, I don't think I would call him a superstar by any means. Like I said, like, star is probably the right term for him. But in the playoffs, he's had moments, he's had a fair amount of moments where he gives you superstar level play. And quite frankly, I think that's something that the Raptors want to be monitoring. Like Donovan, just envisioning him with this group, obviously depending on who you give up in this trade, and I'll at least talk about the hypotheticals a little bit there, but envisioning Donovan with the group is exciting because he has so much of something that I feel like the Raptors have needed ever since that Kawhi Leonard obviously decided to go to LA, play in his hometown. And I feel like it's been a thing that's been talked about for years, and it's the shot creation, right? Donovan Mitchell is a fantastic shot creator. Like, he is a walking bucket. So adding that caliber of a shot creator to this team would just genuinely really raise the ceiling of the team and really kind of, I'd say, jump your timeline ahead in terms of when you realistically think you might be able to compete for a title. So it's something that I think the Raptors should definitely closely monitor the situation. Obviously, if there's murmurings that, he's not happy in Utah, obviously there's been previous murmurings that he doesn't really like Rudy Gobert, although that was kind of around the time of the COVID situation. I don't know if it was directly tied to that. Obviously, none of us know if it was directly tied to that. And they apparently made up afterwards, but he's still, at least according to the rumors, not entirely happy with the situation there. So if you get a chance to get a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's still fairly young, obviously 25, who's the caliber of player that he is, and who has a chance to probably hit at least one more level above where he is now in a better situation, which quite frankly, I think Toronto probably would be. With all due respect to Utah, they're, for the most part, a well-run team, a well-run organization, a well-coached team. I do think there's an extra level that Donovan can still hit, and I think he could absolutely do that with the Raptors, for sure. Now, the other side of this obviously is, and I briefly touched upon it, but you do have to give guys up, right? And the tough part here is, realistically, if you're going to go chase somebody like a Donovan Mitchell, you're probably going to do it at the cost of at least somebody like Gary Trent Jr., especially because obviously they play the same position. So I think that's the natural the natural player that comes to mind. And it's a little bit tough because Gary Trent Jr. is obviously even younger, and he is probably only to some extent scraping the potential of what he's going to be, but it's tough because you don't quite know what the limit on Gary Trent Jr.'s ceiling is. He's consistently gotten better every season, and he's looked very good in the Raptors uniform this year. Fills a lot of the needs that the team obviously has, and he's a great shooter, which, you know, the team obviously needs when you have Pascal and when you have Scotty Barnes, that guys like that just need the extra spacing. So obviously Trent Jr. has been fantastic. Trent Jr. has been a very good player for Toronto, and obviously he's happy in Toronto, and obviously we love him in Toronto, but realistically speaking, that's probably, in this scenario, the name that's going to be at the trade front. And I don't think I have a strong opinion personally on whether, I don't think I have a strong opinion on whether or not I love or hate that. I think that's more or less where I want to go with that. So I'm not going to make one up on the fly, just, to please the audience, but it's a tough question, and I think I'll leave that up to you guys, obviously, in the comment section, is how would you feel about giving up a Gary Trent Jr. if you have a chance to go get somebody like Donovan Mitchell? Again, Mitchell is obviously older, but also Mitchell has kind of shown you that he's a star out of the gate, whereas with Gary Trent Jr., you're kind of still banking on the potential a little bit, and I'm not saying he can't get to a fairly high ceiling. I obviously think he can get to a very quality player in the NBA. I mean, he's already a quality player in the NBA. So I guess the question at the end of the day here is, do you envision at any point that Gary Trent Jr. can be a better NBA pro than Donovan Mitchell? Because if you don't, and you have championship aspirations, and you think you have a chance to get a guy that can push you closer there, and especially if you think Donovan, like I said, still has one more level that he can get to, do you do that trade? I will leave that up to you guys. So drop that in the comment section below. I think that's really been me for the day. I just think this is a situation that has been very interesting to me. I very much so like Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a fantastic player. So envisioning him in a Raptors uniform, I mean, realistically speaking, he's already worn one at a dunk contest, and obviously it was Vince Carter's jersey. But it could be a full-time thing. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That just consider it. Consider making that photo, I guess, or that moment of him in a Raptors jersey a permanent thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it for today. If you liked the video, like I said at the beginning, just make sure to drop a like on it. If you're new here and you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe to the channel. 200 is not a lot of subscribers. Well, to be away from 1K, it's obviously a little less than 200. It's about 200. So be one of those 200 if you're new. Yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it. I think I've said that a few times. But yeah, it's been JJ Buckets. It's been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.